Hey everybody, welcome to Pod Casty For Me, the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Clint Eastwood, where we watch every film directed by and or starring American filmmaker Clint Eastwood and explore how they speak to their moment. And this one, the show's hosted by two guys. I'm one of the guys. My name is Jake Serwin.
I'm one of the guys. My name is Mr. Tolson. Hey, just kidding. Come on. It's Ian Ryan here.
Hey, it's normal. Yeah, I mean, look, we were both thinking about it. We were both watching these guys and thinking, fuck. And it's especially sucks because I'm clearly J. Edgar in the dynamic, just height-wise, attitudinally.
Yep.
So that's been tough for me to
look. Lots to think about. Lots to mull over. It's not going to be the main topic of the conversation here, but might come up.
This is not a 2-question.
Okay.
So don't regard it as such. But I was thinking, would you consider, and I'm not asking if you have considered, because you probably haven't. Would you consider changing your name legally so that you can go by FRANKENSTEIN Ryan?
I can see now why you determined that I probably hadn't thought about this. I initially thought that was some type of an insult because I just haven't considered generally, but no.
No, it's just impossible that one might have, you know?
Yeah, I would consider it. I've mentioned previously that I don't feel any special attachment to my name, which is truly not a slight against my parents. It just doesn't rock my boat either direction, you know?
Now, your middle name again is Matthew?
Yeah. Is that bad to reveal? Is this going to make me more doxable?
I don't think so.
Something of zero interest to anybody.
Honestly, I wish you would get doxed. And by that, I mean, I wish a team of doctors would descend upon you and try to get to the bottom of some of this stuff going on.
Yeah.
You ever seen I, Frankenstein? Stuart Beatty film from...
I don't think we talked about it on the pod. You recommended it on pod. And my heart is...
On Pond?
Yeah, you don't remember this.
On Pond?
Yeah. On Golden Pod.
I don't remember this. I watched it and I found a movie, you know...
You found a movie?
That's
undeniable.
It's a movie in which there's something called the Gargoyle Order.
Yeah, I watched it off your recommendation. It's pretty bad, man. I got to tell you.
It's really bad. Yeah, I watched it, I believe, with past guest Forrest Tiffany. I think we watched it.
It's crazy. I mean, the only thing I'll give him credit for is it's one of these genre pictures that I don't know if this is like pressure from the studio. They waste no time just getting right into the deep mythology of this nonsense world. And that's great. That I like. But unfortunately, the rest of it's pretty bad.
One of those movies where with every new character, you realize more and more that this is an Australian film. You got your Yvonne Strahovski, you got your Jai Courtney, you got Miranda Otto, Caitlin Stacey from Smile, the film Smile.
Bill Nighy is the only one who really stands out as like, man, they dragged him down into this. He owed somebody or he liked somebody or what.
Bill Nighy, the science guy.
Yep. So, yep. I mean, I also like a guy that uses a couple of sticks, a Screama style, a Kali style. That's fun. Beat some guys up with some 2 sticks.
Yeah, you're talking about some of the Filipino arts of stick fighting.
I am. Yep.
Those are pretty cool. I work with a Filipino guy, and
PSA Filipino stick arts.
Yeah, I worked with that's good. The more you know. I work with a Filipino guy, and I asked him if he knows anything about the stick arts, and he said no.
He should have just hit you really hard with like a big stick that was around.
He is I've never seen him. He's like one of the most agreeable people I've ever met in my life.
Sure.
But he is he's built in such a way that I think he could kill someone with a single blow if it ever came to that. Great. He's just like so solid.
Yeah. Solid weight.
I learned something about boba recently.
Okay, what's that?
I have to confirm. You know what? Let's get into our signature segment, the 2 questions. I'm calling it audible. Okay. We don't have a theme song for this. That's one for each question.
Now I can hear the noise. I heard it. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. When it was farts, you could hear it. So my 2 question for you is, did you know, and do you think I'm right, that in Taiwanese slang, boba refers to...
Silent orchestra.
Yeah, no. Boba means balls.
Okay.
But in Taiwanese slang, balls means breasts.
Whoa. I believe you. It doesn't sound that crazy. It seems possible.
Now,
like when somebody says frontal torpedoes for us, equally common.
When someone says that. And for example, let me tell you about a time that someone said that to me. So it's me and Aaron Eckhart and Charlie Chan. And we're at the ice rink. And we're doing whippets.
Yep.
That's basically for Forrest, Tiffany. That's for nobody else. So the answer to the question is no, you didn't know that?
The answer is no, I didn't know that. And yes, I believe you could be right.
Yeah, I'm finding confirmation on nextshark.com.
Oh, wow.
So
basically the OED of internet. What is it called? Internet 3.0? Web 3.0.
Web 3.0 is fake.
Hey, that's Tom Holland. You know what I mean? What I'm talking
about? Yes, dude. That's so good.
Thanks, man.
You mean the guy from the like Pirates of the Caribbean movies and stuff, right? The guy who plays the Prime Minister in Mission Impossible 6.
Right. That's him. That's
5 or 6.
A couple of movie experts here. I guess I have to do a second question. I forgot about this.
Please.
Your mother ever have a set of pearls? A big string of pearls?
Now, this is actually interesting you bring this up.
I'm sure I agree.
So, as we record this, it's a few days after the American holiday of Thanksgiving.
Yep, that's right.
Or as Hayes Davenport of Hollywood Handbook says, Thanksgiving. It's really Thanksgiving. He says thanks. Have you ever
Thanksgiving?
Have you ever heard that?
I have.
Thanks.
I've listened and heard
thanks.
that. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. And on the day of Thanksgiving, my famous podcast girlfriend's stepmom brought out some like costume jewelry that she found that she didn't want and asked Amanda if she wanted it.
I mean, that's a type of a nice gesture for a stepmom to do.
Oh, it's entirely a nice gesture. Yeah. Like, hey, I found this stuff. I don't want it. Before I, get rid of it. Would you be interested in this? And Amanda said yes. And it included a sort of broad, I'm going to implicate myself as a person who doesn't know too much about jewelry stuff, but it was like a necklace that I guess is a series of strings of pearls or pearl,
this
round thing,
type.
But they're joined together. Imagine Isabella Rossellini in Death Becomes Her, as most of our listeners probably already were.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And I thought, is it okay for me to show up on the J. Edgar record wearing this as a bit?
Okay.
And I determined, no, it is not.
Fair. Yep. Good.
But now that you've asked me about this,
it feels like
I can bring it up.
It's true. You secreted it in. Wow. The natural alley-oop.
Yeah.
I think it's tough because it might seem like you're making fun of people who explore beyond their side of the gender binary by cross-dressing, right? Or maybe just enjoy it, just aesthetically. But also in the movie, it's so crazy and bad the moment when he does it that it also is just kind of a good joke about for me, a real clunker of a moment in film.
Oh, shit. I am actually going to push hard on that.
Wow.
I'm going to push back on that and say that is one of the more...
That's so crazy to me.
I don't know if it's great, but I'm going to say it's one of the more interesting and for the podcast exciting moments of the film to talk about.
Wow. I mean, look, I'm anticipating. There's so much politically to talk about in this film that I think we're going to have a lot of.
I didn't find that.
Okay. A lot of Paul chat. I'm going to call it now, but
that sounds like a 4chan thing to say.
All right, then I'm not going to call it that.
You want to take it back?
Yep.
Or?
Take it back.
I remember this one time for some reason my dad found occasion to say 8kun out loud to me, and it was so bad. It was awful.
Yeah, everybody involved was implicated somehow.
I guess he must have read about it in The Economist or something.
Did. But, yes, absolutely. So I don't know how much we're going to get into the aesthetics of the film, but to me, this was just emblematic of these like empty gestural moments that are, I think, meant to be emotionally heavy, and they're recalling a psycho or a whatever this character insight which I will say, so much of the J. Edgar story to me is inherently artistically interesting. It just seems like it's such good fodder for a film.
Yes.
And unfortunately, almost none of that is brought across success. And I'll say it's such good fodder for a Clint Eastwood film specifically. So I was just kind of shocked that it didn't work for me that well. To say like these two men wrapped up in this machine that they've created and forced to sacrifice their love because one of the elements of the machine is forcing all gay people to sacrifice their love for each other and anybody outside the like hetero capitalist norm. So what a nice little like small tragedy. To me, this is like where Clint Eastwood shines, these political adjacent personal tragedies. And it just didn't rock and roll for me. But you're saying you like the necklace. Tell me about why the necklace is good.
Well, we have to close out the two questions. You're getting ahead of yourself.
Everybody. Thanks.
Hey, what? Are you upset with me?
No.
Are you mad in some way? Okay.
Not at all. I'm having a good time, actually.
For sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm having what has come to mean a good time for me.
Yeah, determined for you might be the only type of good time available.
Relativistically, a good time. Yep. So my mother, I believe, had some pearls. I don't know if they were real or not, but also she certainly had, like an oyster, a long-term irritant that sort of became opalescent in a way.
I'm looking at him and I love him.
Yeah, hey, thanks, man. What's a freshwater pearl? Like, I mean, obviously I know what it means, but like, do you know how they are distinct from
No, I just know that
saltwater pearls?
I believe that the connotation is that they're less valuable, right? I'm not sure why. Okay. Both ideology, right? Maybe it's a rarity.
You have to kill the oyster to get the pearl,
I don't know if you have to, but I believe that they do.
It's basically like a goiter or something.
Yeah.
Like it's like a tumor.
Yeah, tumor is usually your own cells growing, but it is like, I don't know, some type of fatty abscess.
What is a pearl like? The third question. The mythic third question has arrived.
Yeah.
Fatty abscess.
Yeah.
Let's see. Charlie Chaplin wore his pants. Is there anything else there? Probably not. Okay.
Yeah.
To quote the character in this film, of course, Attorney General Stone, who's played by the Cabletown guy. What's his name? He was the CEO of the Scheinhart Wig Company or something on Ken Howard.
I loved this guy, and I love to see him here.
Yeah.
He's one of these just little treats.
But to paraphrase him, this podcast is of exceedingly bad odor. I just want to say.
It's true, yeah. And also to paraphrase him, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Hey, buddy. I want only beefcakes for the hosts of this show.
Right. Yeah.
They've got to be physically fit, white, brunette.
Something that I believe to be merit-based, but is in fact our arbitrary, purely subjective selection.
They need to have unacted upon cannibalistic impulses. If we could get Armie Hammer on the show, would you have him?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to reveal that I wanted to reread the accounts of this hullabaloo, and I didn't make time for that. I forgot. And now I'm scared to answer the question because I can't remember how many people actually got hurt. And I don't want to say...
Well, I think it was there were sort of two things going on. One is that he said some crazy shit about having cannibalistic impulses. Right. But then separately,
he was his partners, right?
And difficult to work with, like mistreating the people he worked with as well. Okay. So I think there was one sort of sensational aspect to it, and then a less salacious, just bummer.
So I'm going to say no. The answer is no. I don't want him to come on the podcast.
Okay, because I think we are
I
2
am
degrees
aware
away
of
from
this
Armie
connection
Hammer.
that we have to Armie Hammer. So yeah. Yep.
His family makes my deodorant.
Yeah,
that's
right.
The connection.
We both went to school by his museum. That's our connection. We can go ask the museum if you can get him on the podcast.
And everyone listening to this, we encourage you, go ask the museum.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the film.
All right.
Today we're discussing the film Jedgar. This is J. Edgar.
Film about two young Irish singer-songwriter boys who made it big on Eurovision.
I don't
Okay.
follow.
Oh my God.
What is... No, come on, fill me in. What's going on here?
What is this? This is only for people who were like aware of X Factor in 2009. I used to watch a lot of British panel shows, and they would frequently joke about Jedward.
Jedward? Is this like a
It's like a little
portmanteau
pop duo? Their names are like Jeremy and Edward or something.
Okay. I mean, I don't dislike that.
Okay, cool.
I saw the new Ridley Scott film Napoleon yesterday.
Yep. What'd you think?
And then, of course, I was thinking about the ABBA song Waterloo, which I put on in the car on the way home.
It's a wonderful song.
And then was thinking about that might have been the first Eurovision. Did you know that? That ABBA is basically like Kelly Clarkson?
No, I did not know that.
They're like the first and still most successful winner of...
It turns out if you hang around long enough, people just start to believe that you're just good. Like you're just good, pure pop. Even though you might be... I guess this is both good and bad pop, just extremely commercially manufactured.
Yeah, it's all fake.
Yep.
Ooh. Now, either I'm wrong or the ABBA song Waterloo came out in 1956. Which one do you think is correct?
Okay.
There's no way to know.
Yep. All right. The film is J. Edgar, a biopic of J. Edgar Hoover, John Edgar Hoover.
Yeah. Now, I want to right off the bat, I think a previous 2 question was, have you ever considered going by a different name or something like that? I think we've talked about that.
We came up with cowboy names for each other. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, there was that, and there was the Irish terms of endearment.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we've talked about this. But anyway, I mean, I'll just ask it again. Have you ever had you said you don't feel connected to your name. Have you ever had an instance where you thought about being I, Matthew Ryan or whatever, or going by like...
Well, here's what I can reveal on this.
I am Ryan.
I, did some creative writing in college, as one is wont to do if you're an English major. And when I was thinking about publishing, I had a pseudonym a very lazy pseudonym, because I didn't care if people found out about me, because I'm not a famous or interesting person.
I'm so excited.
It didn't matter. Oh no, I'm not going to reveal it. Because what if I write a little story again someday?
What if your pseudonym is Donna Tartt?
What if?
What if you were
it is
her?
A very lazy, basically like transliterate. I picked another short name that is also basically in every Western language. And then I picked a last name based on where my parents came from that was like equally popular as my last name. Same number of letters for first and last. So that's my answer.
Okay, so... Oh, I can figure this out.
You're because this is very low effort.
First, so it's okay. So it's a name that exists in every Western language, and a last name where your parents are from, and they're both the same number of letters.
Yep.
John Hell. He's laughing. I can't hear the laughter, but it's okay.
Really good. I thought you were going to like crack it. So it got me extra hard. All right. I was worried that you were also going to take like 55 minutes to try to figure it out. And I would have to sort of scoot you along. Okay. All right. What about yourself, man? Do you ever think about using a different formulation of your name?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about...
I mean, your name's already kind of made up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, both parts of my name are made up. The first name is not actually related, like classically, to my legal first name, and then the last name is an Americanized version of a Polish name. But then I have also thought that Jake is a very strong, consonant.
It is
a tough consonant cluster, Saxony. And then my last name is very it's sort of soft, or like
totally.
Yeah, it's kind of like a river stone. It's been worn smooth. And I don't really like that.
Oh.
So I've thought about... Yeah. We're not in agreement here. Okay. I thought about, a last name that would be more consonantal and strong. So like a Jake Dagger, Jake Hammer, Jake Dagger Hammer.
Yep.
Something like that.
Jack Kraken. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
I can start calling you Jake Dagger. You want to do that?
Jake Crankerman.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Is that funny?
Yeah. I mean, it's true.
Jake Spiderman.
Uh-huh.
Is that something? We already talked about him. J. Edgar is a film by Clint Eastwood. released November 11th, 2011. This is, of course, the same day as Tarsem Singh's Immortals, which, despite seeming like just a 300 ripoff, is actually a much more interesting movie and worth checking out. Melancholia by Lars von Trier. And another film starring Jeff Pearson, the actor who plays A. Mitchell Palmer in this film, who was in Changeling. Same day, he's in this film, J. Edgar, and Dennis Dugan's Jack and Jill.
Oh, wow. Powerful.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy to think about?
Yeah, that is crazy.
Pretty cool. Caitlyn Jenner's in that movie? And Jared Fogle.
I did not know about either of those things. That must have been right under the wire, huh? Wasn't that about 2013? The big
2011. Oh, when Fogle got when he got railroaded, that was 2015.
Okay. Can't get on board with
Although
that.
allegations began in 2007.
Oh, okay.
So a slow burn.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is a sort of jazzy biopic of J. Edgar Hoover. He was the FBI. We'll sort of get to the bottom of this. I think with the film
basically single-handedly creates it and then runs it for almost 50 years. Just incredible.
And the building is called the J. Edgar Hoover Building to this day. So his stink is all over this thing. Yeah, I'm just going to come out with it right now. I think this is an interesting and effective film in terms of depicting, without hitting you over the head with it, exactly why no one should be allowed to run a government institution for that long.
Yeah. I mean, the power
that is ultimately the message of the film.
What some people call deep states, but really just like non-elected officials in major bureaucratic positions who can shape the government.
The shadow government, if you will.
Yeah, I might. Yeah. And I agree with you. Yes, I think it's particularly powerful because it is a discussion of why a guy thinks it's better to have one person run something in a way that I think is like teasing, right? Because we're sort of drawn into his arguments while at the same time demonstrating why this is such an incredibly bad idea.
Well, and I think also getting at the personal peculiarities, personal fixations, and
the human frailties, extremely
pathologies of all kinds.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You could, I guess, suggest that this is in some way a hit piece or gossipy or salacious, but I think that this is just further evidence for the fact that we can't have anybody running any of this stuff for that long. And it wasn't until Bob Mueller, 70-year-old, the Krasenstein brothers, sexiest man of all time.
Right. Yep.
It wasn't until him that there was a term limit imposed on FBI directors of like 10 years.
Yeah.
Like
it's wild. I mean, although it's about government bureaucracy, I was reflecting on the fact that it also is kind of a statement about private industry entrepreneurship, because this is the exact argument for why the private side of things is more efficient, right? Because you're saying like there's no reset, one person, there's this kind of implicit autocracy where people get to make decisions and they can streamline things and there's continuity. And as we can see, that is just a breeding ground for total psychos. So it's an effective condemnation of both public and private sphere, I think. And
I think this is the film that is firmly late Clint pilled me, because in all of its almost Brechtian weirdness, I find the film's greatest strengths. And I think, for example, the absolutely horrific makeup job on Leonardo DiCaprio serves to make the man even more monstrous and to
alienate us from him as a human being. Yeah, that's
and honestly, who looks the closest to what these guys kind of look like toward the end of the film with all the
if not
prosthetics
Statler and Waldorf?
I was gonna say, if not post facelift Joe Biden.
That's true. That's true.
Did he get the facelift on October 7th? Because it's been like,
I don't know.
It's been totally concurrent to me. Like
mid-procedure to give him the news. Yeah, maybe.
They brought him up out of the anesthesia and then they put him back under. Oh man, wow, man.
Uh-huh.
I hope all the pizza and pasta's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, George Bush was there too. That was one of the craziest parts about it.
Fuck.
That
is crazy. It would be crazy if that were true.
It's wild. The mask thing, actually, I guess I should say the prosthetic thing, it's just so distracting. I hate to nitpick on something so monotonous, right? Something that I would say, like, we should be able to get over it. But Armie Hammer looks crazy.
Well, he looks...
Leo DiCaprio looks
crazy.
Hammer,
okay, hold on. Here's who everybody looks like. You ready?
All right, I'm ready.
So Leonardo DiCaprio, first of all, doesn't look like J. Edgar Hoover at any point during the film. Just not a guy who looks like Hoover.
I had to double check because I thought, wow, what if this is just like hyper realistic and I'm the goon?
J. Edgar Hoover looks like a guy who had that thing happen to him where Daffy Duck is behind a door and the door gets opened really fast and then it swings forward and he's flattened against the wall. Like J. Edgar Hoover has a really flat face and is honestly kind of, you know who I think would have played a great Hoover just visually is Tracy Walter. Do you remember this guy? He's in Honky Tonk Man, but he's also Bob the Goon in
of course,
in Tim Burton's
of
Batman.
Course. Yeah, great.
Yeah. Doesn't he kind of look like him?
Yeah, love it.
I think Peter Lorre might also have played a good Hoover.
That
They're
I
kind
agree
of,
with. Yes.
Unusual looking men.
Uh-huh.
And then you cast like one of the. I mean, he's a faded heartthrob at this point. He's still extraordinarily famous, but I don't think anyone is putting pictures of 2011
on the
Leo in their
tweens are not doing
lockers.
This, but in 2011 he's pretty hot still. Yeah, is he a good man?
He's searching for the blood
seemingly
diamond.
Not, but he's searching for the blood diamond. Yeah,
or whatever happens in that movie. I haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So DiCaprio doesn't look like him, and then once he puts the makeup on, he looks remarkably like Jon Voight to me. He looks so much like specifically,
particularly late period Jon Voight, and Jon Voight's always kind of being in a late period.
Jon Voight.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And also the accents.
Let's see, late period Jon Voight. Let's see, he goes to the CVS to get a pregnancy test. What else happens with late period Jon Voight?
That could be.
He's wondering if he just really wants pickles or if something more dire
Maybe
is going on.
He hasn't been consuming enough iron-containing food. Has to worry about his nutrition habits.
Yeah, get some, and that brings us to our today's sponsor. Ritual? Is that what it's called?
I don't have a goddamn clue what you're talking about.
There's one of these podcast advertisers that's it's like pills. It's like vitamins.
Okay. Yep, it's the vitamins, folks. It's the vitamins. He's doing a voice which I had to interpret from the jump as an attempt at a mid-Atlantic type of a thing.
When you listen to J. Edgar Hoover, he sounds normal.
He
doesn't sound like this.
You talked once about, I think, Flags of Our Fathers. Maybe you said all movies should have pictures of the real person after the movie. I immediately just looked up a video clip of J. Edgar to figure out what he looked like and sounded like. He talks very fast, as everybody has made much of this.
Yep. Because he was maybe on amphetamines,
right?
Medically,
and also was overcoming a stutter, and that was maybe part of it as well.
Yeah.
He does not sound like a middle school actor trying to do a British accent and like getting about half the words.
It is very middle school. It's very community theater. I think I know what happened.
Okay, tell us.
Can I present my theory? I think Leo was like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of this guy, J. Edgar from Men in Black." And he was doing Vincent D'Onofrio. Give me sugar in water.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that might be what happens. That's why he says, like, it's so important that this doesn't occur.
Yeah, the beer. He puts so many. He tries to pronounce every vowel in the word bureau.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of textural stuff that is subtracting from what I otherwise agree with you.
Right.
The story on paper, such a fascinating story. I think we're both going to be referencing Beverly Gage's wonderful book, G-Man, a lot. There's so much to talk about, to think about. And even the basic achronological stuff, we did this in Flags of Our Fathers. I think it's also a good idea. We're talking about a man, how his origins influence his present, and how his sort of like dreams of the future inform his past. And it's a fine idea. So much of it seems like it should work.
He's also the man who used television and used media generally, film, radio, comic books, to create a specific image of law enforcement.
Propagandize, absolutely.
Which can, of course, only deepen the appeal of this project for Clint, I would imagine. He's also a guy with an unusual private life, and he's also the man who's single-handedly, I think, brought like the federal government into the private lives of individuals, which seems like the kind of thing that
to have this Clint, extreme overstepping of your powers and entanglement with people's lives in a way that violates basically all of their fundamental liberties in the like classical liberal sense.
Exactly. We've also got Armand Douglas Hammer, Armie to his friends like us, as Hoover's longtime companion, gal pal, Clyde Tolson. Now, Armie Hammer is great casting as an object of gay lust.
Yep.
This has been portrayed in other films as well.
And specifically combining that with his like Yale-y old school look, I think is nice.
Blue blood, yeah. When he gets the makeup on, he looks like if somehow there was a movie made called Muppet All the President's Men and Beaker played Gerald Ford. That's what he looks like.
That is true. That's
he's wiggling so
undeniably
much.
What he looks like.
After the stroke or whatever, he is just... I'm trying to do it on the camera, but he's just...
You know what? That was not even among the things that bothered me the most, because it's this attempt at humanization in these moments where J. Edgar's making decisions about the world that are obviously based on his bizarre self-aggrandizement, narcissism, and to have this other guy who kind of enabled him for his entire life, but maybe acted as a very soft critic. Now in a point of like he's just beyond politics right now. He's just suffering because humans have human bodies. That was okay for me, but there's just too many distractions. You can't have that many distracting choices happening at the same time, is what I would say.
I would agree with that. You can't... I'm going to push back. I don't know why I said that. I was trying to look something up while also conducting the podcast. No, I don't agree with that. I think that there... I was trying to figure out if William Sullivan appears in the film at all.
I was just thinking about William Sullivan as well.
I think that the film doesn't have too many distractions. I think everything is sort of in service of this grander... Or most of it is in service of this grander theme of the conflict between individual lives and like historical processes and the functioning of governments. I don't think the film actually really presents us with what we should do instead of this, but it does highlight the problems inherent with having some...
I don't think every guy, for me at least,
be in charge
media or even things that are explicitly political theory can just be critique. This is what people say about Karl Marx's Capital, right? It doesn't have to be like what if not this, then what?
Fair enough. I would love to see like Clint lay out in exhaustive detail his ideas for a reimagined federal law enforcement body.
It could be very illuminating.
We're not there yet. Come on the show, Clint Eastwood. You're finally in episode
extending our
47 or whatever.
Coveted invitation.
Invited on Pod Casty For Me. That's why he wasn't getting back to us before. No. So, yeah, this film was written by Dustin Lance Black, Mr. Milk himself.
Mr. Milk,
who was sort of hot commodity as he's a former Mormon, a foreman, if you will.
I will. I'd be happy to.
I would say DLB kind of has an Armie Hammer vibe to me. Like he's very sort of all-American looking, except that he's gay. And at the time had like a really bad sort of early Justin Bieber haircut. And so it's very strange to see this man who's far too old to look like that in the behind the scenes stuff. But he writes kind of I mean the structure recalls to me like Flags of Our Fathers in a way. We have all these sort of nested memories, and some of them are calling back to or some of them are sort of motivated by this memoir that Hoover is dictating.
I was going to say that is the theoretical frame narrative, right? Is that this is a total artifact of fiction. I believe a friend of this episode, Beverly Gage, pointed out that there's no such memoir that she's aware of, something that was dictated to other agents to
including
recall what
the first of these is Ed Westwick.
It's true.
As
Chuck Bass himself.
As Agent Smith. Which Mr. Anderson, remember from...
Yeah, you know what I was thinking about is it's so crazy that Armie Hammer's character goes on to basically like sort of bring all the Avengers together through his death. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I do get that.
It's just something to think about.
Should we go back to what I was going to do, which is say some Clint lines in a bad Hugo Weaving Agent Smith impression?
Sure.
Or
do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's some of the stuff he says?
Some thing that he
Play
might say.
Misty for me. He doesn't say that. It's not him. The other character. Anyway, moving on. So, by the way, in looking this up and trying to determine if there was any proof anywhere that Clint Eastwood has seen any of the Matrix movies outside of him saying that the Matrix sequels were really helpful to whatever movie he was working on at the time.
It was Mystic River because of Lawrence Fishburne.
Yes. Apparently, Carrie-Anne Moss, in preparing to play Trinity, the famous character of Trinity in the Matrix movies, watched a bunch of Clint Eastwood movies and decided that Clint's sort of stillness and steeliness was going to inform Trinity.
Ooh.
So that's
interesting.
Cool and interesting, because apparently
that's why she does the big motorcycle flip like that.
Yeah, that's why Trinity has at least 9 acknowledged children. Anyway, so we've got...
So there's this frame narrative, but like you're saying, we get something in sometimes like the true mid-century, like the 40s or 50s, then we might jump back to very early beginning of his career, something related, or now we're in the late 60s, seemingly as the like quote unquote president of the film.
And then it's revealed at the end by Agent Coulson that he made a lot of that shit up or misremembered it. Like you didn't arrest Carpus.
It's like a little bit of a Memento revelation. Yeah. Bordering on a twist, but doesn't quite have the sort of like frame changing.
Yeah. Another film starring Armie Hammer, Rashomon. No, it's sort of like The Social Network. Honestly, I was thinking about The Social Network a lot in relationship to this movie because from the get-go, basically, when we see the young Hoover trying to woo Helen Gandy by showing her the Library of Congress organizational system that he developed. This is sort of the story like with Zuckerberg, and specifically in The Social Network, the story of someone who has a very peculiar and unsuccessful way of understanding human relationships and decides to impose this skewed framework on the entire world by turning people into cards full of data, the same way that...
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I would add that I think in both cases, it is somebody who has a genuine recognition of a way that you could make something more objective or more reduced to data, but they don't recognize that in seeking objectivity, you're still applying, like you're saying, your subjective frame. So it's not, I don't think either of them is not being scientific in a certain way, right? I think this is one of the big things that people credit to J. Edgar, regardless of how they feel about him. You know, he did organize the way that we do intelligence. He did add fingerprinting. He did add, like blood type, sort of like cataloging, etc.
There's that. I was thinking during the scene with the aftermath of the bombing of Palmer's house, where he's talking about how the police on the scene were cleaning up the blood in buckets. It reminded me a lot of that John Mulaney joke about like pre-CSI like cops saying,
I
we
don't know if
found
I
a bunch of the
remember this.
killer's blood in the hall, and the other cop saying, gross. Another
That's
problematic man. A lot of problematic
Yep.
men involved in this.
Some type of a pattern is emerging about
Men.
Yeah.
We failed to say that what's his nuts? Ed Westwick, among their number. He's I think a problem. That guy.
Yeah.
Seems to have found a good amount of work in China though. So he's now playing like the white guy.
Sign of probably somebody doing good stuff all the time. I like, if we're just talking about techniques that again in isolation work, J. Edgar Hoover seeking affirmation, but somebody who's basically confirming his perspective on history. So he will just silently switch out an agent, like the new agent who's recording his memoir. I don't think it gets acknowledged until like the third or fourth one that this is happening. Yeah,
we get that whole sequence where we're kind of jumping around, but so is the film. We get that whole sequence where he's asking a series of young men who the most significant figure of the 20th century is, and anyone who just has the wrong answer to this vague and subjective question just disappears until someone says Charles Lindbergh.
Well, until somebody does like the human thing of saying, well, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, how do you
framework are you talking? Yeah.
Yeah. And then he gets a hint. His field was the sky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah, very. But again, this is like what a megalomaniac guy who thinks he's a genius would like be doing a test while accidentally revealing that he's just a total weirdo, right?
Yeah. As somebody who lived in the Washington D.C. area for a while, this film serves as a helpful reminder that anyone who's from D.C. is an extremely dangerous person who should be prevented from achieving any measure of power.
Yep. Which, interestingly, again, is the type of thing that J. Edgar in the film, and I think seemingly in real life, observes about other people from DC. There's a little line where he's talking about how they had to use the Department of Labor because they were already deporting people. I don't know if it's totally recognized in the film. They kind of make it sound like a new thing, but they had already been deporting potentially seditious aliens, particularly anarchists, for like several decades, and he used his power. But he says something about how nobody in Washington freely shares power, right? So there's this recognition that like everybody is clinging and scrabbling and self-interested.
Before we get to this, let me jump back 1 second to the Palmer stuff, which is, I think, the first thing that is presented in the film and sort of...
Well, let me just ask, should we just go through it that way, just in the chronological form, which is not the form of the film? In
film chronology, maybe. Did you notice... who plays Palmer's daughter?
No, I did not.
Your friend from Justified, Caitlin Dever.
Wow.
Yeah.
She's not the biggest. I mean, she's the second most important Justified person in this film, but that's great. Good find.
Who is the most important Justified person in the film?
Well, I wanted to apologize to I assume there's a small but loyal contingent of Justified fans who are just here to listen to me just mention somebody being from Justified.
There's no justification for being a fan of the show.
Great. So Flags of Our Fathers, I didn't mention Neil McDonough, but in part it's because I think of him as a guy who's in a lot of stuff and it just happens to be in a season of Justified. But here we have Damon Harriman, who any big J heads know as old Dewey Crow, a man I think who just like single-handedly carries a lot of Justified on his back. So big shout out.
Leonardo DiCaprio has a big J head in this film.
It's true, he does.
Damon Harriman, I think of primarily as Charles Manson in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is another
true.
Leonardo DiCaprio film that is sort of about Clint Eastwood.
Dewey Crow.
Okay, don't know about this. Don't know what any of this is. Not interested. Moving on.
So Palmer raids.
So the Palmer raids. So there's some anarchists. Now I checked with a friend of the show, past guest, and lawyer Eric Markovitz,
right,
and got some non-legal advice, non-binding, non-professionally given. This is simply his offhand understanding as my pal, but he says that we are probably fine to lament violence that did not happen to people who are now dead.
Sure.
So we can go ahead and say things like, the world would be a much better place if
if Rockefeller and Carnegie were dead. Yep.
Yeah, or J. Edgar Hoover had been shot in the head at any point in his whole life. It's too bad, so sad.
Too bad. A little propaganda of the deed that wasn't.
Yeah. So, can you give us a quick overview of these bombings and the Palmer raids and all of this?
Sure, happy to. This is a fascinating time in the United States history that I think is basically just glossed over, at least in my experience. I grew up in a fairly liberal area, but this is pre First Red Scare. The run up to all this is happening at the end of the 19th century, where anarchists are inspired by a bunch of European movements and the a lot
of Italians, right?
Yep, a lot of Italians. I mean, the actual people who did the 1919 stuff are Galleanists.
Yeah, I think that this period is so glossed over in history that for a little while, as a young person learning about this, I wasn't fully aware or wasn't clear on whether Marconi, who invented the radio, wasn't also like one of the Haymarket bombers or something. Because it's just the only time Italian Americans come up at all in like U.S. history is basically bombings and the invention of the radio, and we move on.
Right, or Fermi. Yeah, inventors and bombers. Not a bad split.
Yeah, shout out to all those guys over there.
So you mentioned, we could trace this, just to pick a kind of arbitrary point, back to like Great Upheaval, Haymarket Affair type stuff. People are fighting for the 8-hour workday. A lot of the industry standard labor protections that we take for granted as something that the U.S. just gifted to us out of love and liberty. And a lot of this involved bombing. The Haymarket Affair involved bombing, and it's something that specifically inspired Emma Goldman, who comes up in this film. So she was like a recent...
Played by Jessica Hecht.
Yeah, that's right.
Recognized from Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Continue.
No, that's right. So she was a recent immigrant, I think, when the Haymarket stuff happened, and she recognized that this was something that she could get behind. So her and her lover, I think his first name is Alexander Beckman, I think.
Yeah.
They decide to imitate this a bit later. They try to assassinate the guy whose name is Frank or something, Clay Frank, the guy who is behind the Homestead strikes. So one of these big industrialists, I think associated.
Yeah, they were going to kill a capitalist.
Yeah, Beckman breaks into the office, shoots him unsuccessfully. It kind of has the opposite reaction where the workers are horrified by this, and Emma Goldman loses her good buddy, and it starts her down this path of arguing, I think, very admirably and effectively. Her role as an orator, I think, is one of the main things people praise her for. But she's going around, she's trying to incite people on labor causes, on gender causes, on birth control causes, on gay rights causes. She's just like this terrific advocate and pioneer in talking about intertwined issues that basically previously had not been brought together. So very cool. But she's one of a number of anarchists who are seen as basically the number one fundamental threat to the United States. So again, I think in the film, they kind of make it seem like J. Edgar invented this, or J. Edgar and Palmer invented this after the 1919 bombings. But I think we have like 20 years before this of time where people were scared of European anarchists specifically. In fact, I like that in the film, J. Edgar keeps saying Bolsheviks, which they are very explicitly not. That is one of the things that they define themselves as not being. So it's just kind of this cursory understanding, right? He believes he has like seen their heart, but he doesn't even really know what they're arguing for.
Well, but also, I mean, that people are obviously really freaked out by the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia that is toppled an old established empire of Europe. So
violated the state monopoly on violence, right? So again, this is
right in 1917.
Exactly.
So this is like, it seems in the film when Hoover is talking about it, like, I mean, and I guess this gets to a broader question that I'd like to address, but who is America that he's talking about? Because so often he is opposed to so many Americans.
I think you're asking a fundamental question of the film. Yeah, who does he mean when he says all these other people are a threat to us? Who is left as us? And I think he basically means himself sort of expanded to anybody he can't specifically accuse of a crime amongst other like white males.
Yeah, exactly. He is like above all else a soldier of the established order. He sees himself as defending what currently is against any force that would change it in any way.
Exactly. Yep.
So Goldman is also crucial in at least the film's depiction of Hoover. I don't know if this is true to life, but she is the first person whose personal life he weaponizes to bring her down. And also he does what now reads as an eerily neoconservative act, which is like digging up some weird legal loophole, essentially, to use the power of the Department of Labor to deport somebody because he doesn't have the legal go ahead through the Bureau of Investigation to do so.
Yeah. Again, I think they've been deporting people specifically as radicals for at least 20 years before this, since 1903, probably. So the idea that he innovated this, I think, is made up. But like you're saying, the fact that he sees her as the biggest threat to the United States is something we're going to see again and again, particularly in MLK as he comes up later, right? But this idea that the scariest thing you can have is somebody who wants to change the political order, the like system of power as it exists,
right?
Which is strange and a contradiction that people like Gage bring out really nicely, because he is somebody who wants to change things to be able to protect this order better, right? He is like an innovator, a maverick, a leader in a certain sense,
a John McCain type,
right? Yes, I mean, he's remaking the government in his image, but it's an image that he thinks fundamentally will protect what it already is. And these people are looking to change and don't like what it already is.
It's very specifically his idea of it, which is, I don't know. We could talk about what is America or whatever. We could get a book on a bunch of lists from all of the great established print outlets of the 21st century to say, like, you must read this book that tells you why it's important to get women on the board of drone companies or whatever. But when I say what is America, I mean, like, what exactly does Hoover love that he's trying to protect that doesn't also fundamentally involve the rights of people to vote for a new thing that they want?
I mean, he loves Christianity. He loves whiteness. He loves the illusion of peaceful democracy, right? So we know, in fact, that democracy can be, inherently violent in the ways that it treats people, but he likes the idea that things should be like only violent in the way that they are legally violent, not in the way that any type of, extra legal violence. And
he doesn't want change.
Yeah, I think those are his favorite things, right? These are inherited values. He has sought them out basically his entire career. Even when he's against Ku Klux Klan people, and then like far right people later on,
which he brags to the one black biographer.
This is a little like a Get Out moment. He is clearly against them because they are undermining the way that the government functions, right? Not
they're violating the state monopoly of violence.
Exactly. So it's not because he doesn't like the idea that you want to protect white children and their future in the country, or whatever the phrase is.
Yeah. Could you put it in like 14 words or less?
Try. Yep.
Hell, I'll give you 15 or less. So he then, through this, the Palmer raids, interestingly, I didn't realize were the sort of the impetus for the formation of the ACLU. ACLU was founded in 1920.
That's okay.
Because this is a fairly unpopular encroachment upon civil rights of American citizens.
Which, again, they do a good job of pointing out, right? He says, like, basically, as soon as everybody's safe, they're ready to complain about our methods. He says that like several times in the film. Which
is something that used to sort of bother me as obviously a boy living in the DC area who moved there in late August 2001.
Yeah, was there something going on that made you feel scared?
Well, not then, a couple weeks later. But the kind of impossible to track state of whether everything is okay or not. And then, of course, we get the terror alert color-coded system, which is, at the time, I firmly believed was real. Exactly the same as like the Smokey the Bear fire risk sign, but really just served as like a sort of a DEFCON for
arbitrary,
the fear-mongering PR
but
machine.
That's, I mean, the power of semi-scientific utilitarian thinking is that you get to decide what might happen or what you're saving us from happening, which of course will always be infinitely scarier than the thing that you are doing, right? So to say we can torture people at Gitmo because if we didn't, did you see 9/11 every day? You know, every day would be a 9/11. And that's of course that's scary. Of course it was torturing one guy, not a big deal.
Okay, so what happens? Does he next meet? So he meets Helen Gandhi.
This is a fascinating relationship.
Remind me, she's Mahatma Gandhi's sister.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No.
This is Naomi Watts. She's gonna get her own bad makeup, but more modest later.
With like some of the wateriest eyes. Whatever contacts they were giving her were really like realistically upsetting to the way that very old people's eyes start to look like aspic, like not even jelly, like aspic, a savory gelatin.
Nasty.
And she is sort of his perfect match because she is also perhaps asexually committed to her work.
Yep.
Naomi Watts, a real glow up for Helen Gandhi. This is not an ad hominem attack, but I again, just someone who does not resemble the real woman at all.
Kind of an unusual choice. I guess that I like Naomi Watts as an actor.
Me too.
I don't know that we're really using anything that's good about her here.
My guess is that Clint really liked Peter Jackson's King Kong and thought Naomi Watts has something of a 20s dame about her.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. But I mean, I like Naomi Watts. It's always nice to see her. It's so weird watching the behind the scenes thing, which again was put together in 2011, the little like featurette on the Blu-ray. But the way that these people are, especially the actors, are sort of conceiving of the people they're playing who are, to my mind, true enemies of the people, like enemies of regular folk, some of the worst people of the 20th century.
Sure. They had just an outsized deleterious effect on our whole society, if not the world at large.
And the way that, they have to play human beings, I guess, but the way that they are sort of talking about them as, they have good and bad in them like everybody, which is not untrue, but is also like, not the way you would talk about playing Hitler.
Right. You would
say, I was trying to conceive of how he thought of himself. Like you can get to the same ideas without saying,
which I think are interesting actor ideas to say, like, and even directorial ideas, which I think is he's trying to do, to say, well, how sad that this person who made the world truly miserable, if not violently oppressive for gay people, was a gay man, right? That, of course, you could say, isn't that it's just a fascinating contradiction for a human to experience? But yeah, you would be much more careful if everybody understood that the person was a monster, which concerns me that maybe that's not the case, the assumption.
It's so funny. There's a line from Dennis O'Hare, who plays the handwriting expert, who is also the doctor in Changeling in charge of the institution.
Nice to see him again. Jeffrey Donovan again. A lot of repeats.
He's a gay man, Dennis O'Hare. And so they interview him in this little press kit very briefly, talking about Hoover. And he says, I mean, if we didn't have J. Edgar Hoover, we wouldn't have CSI. CSI Miami, CSI Las Vegas. I mean, an entire TV genre wouldn't exist.
Is that a very good joke, or is that...
I think he's doing a bit, but I think the director of this little featurette doesn't realize
he's making a good point. Like, oh, yeah, well, he's right.
Yeah. And then Leonardo DiCaprio says, the man revolutionized the police system in America and created something truly incredible that has lasted to this day.
That last part's definitely true.
Yeah. It reads to me like either he had the same sort of baked in assumptions that many white men had until, in some cases right now, but also certainly until, for example, like 2020. Oh, that, or he genuinely loves the cops. I don't know. I mean, rich people love the cops because they're scared of poor people coming to get them.
Yes.
So we meet Helen Gandhi. They, as we said, Hoover shows her his Library of Congress collection. Honestly, put this guy in charge of the Library of Congress.
Oh, yeah.
Probably would have done a great job.
I know. We're really revealing once again that in the right world, some people could do a lot of good. Yeah. Because you can't be that, I guess he could be, censoring books or something, but He seemed to mostly be focused on the organization part. Did a great job.
But yeah, he seemed to have a real organizational mind.
Yeah.
I mean, I hesitate with this and with The Social Network. I don't want to like bring neurodivergence into this to suggest in any way that neurodivergent people are like inherently fascistic or something,
Right.
because I think a lot of the most compelling and exciting thinkers that I know of on the left are also neurodivergent
Correct.
people. I
I
mean, it's
agree.
you know, different perspectives,
And just
unique
open
ways of
people
looking
up.
at the world,
Yeah.
which we also, you know, there's 8 billion of those or whatever, but
But some of them are more unique than others. Mm-hmm.
yes, there is something here to the idea that this guy was like very strange,
Yeah.
and everyone notices it, but somehow he just manages to like what is the Survivor thing? Outwit, outlast, out
I don't remember. But
Fox, whatever. All of these kind of more Armie Hammer type, Mitchell Palmer, who, by the way, thanks to the extraordinarily dark cinematography of Tom Stern, I thought for most of the opening of the film was an uncredited Kevin Costner. But in fact, it's
okay.
Jeff Pearson.
It is. Yep.
This is he gets to levels of dark that are shocking.
Yeah, sure. He's trying to out Surtees. Yeah. I think that a lot of the film looks fine to me. It's pretty dark, but
He also mentioned that I was reading this. There's a really fascinating article on this, interviewing Tom Stern and some other people, including Clint, in American Cinematographer. And I guess I haven't messed around with American Cinematographer so much. I didn't realize it literally has like diagrams of light placements.
yeah, isn't it cool?
It's so cool.
Shout out to very recent guests, Ray and Jordan, who talk about this on their podcast. They will talk about like pictures of light placement. Wonderful.
Shout out to just like getting nitty gritty.
Yeah.
I love the nitty gritty of this stuff. If you want to have an obsession with something, have an obsession with like lenses. You know, that's always cool. Everybody likes that.
Yeah.
Stop being obsessed with rooting out communism.
Yeah, or like
Anyway.
fishing lures. I love a guy who loves fishing lures.
Well, that I think gets to sort of an animal rights place where
That's true.
we'd have to push it
You're
back.
right.
Lenses especially, they don't take any electricity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Or be like the wood guy.
Yeah.
The wood guy's cool. I like this wood guy.
Yep.
Right place, right time. He'd be one of the YouTubers I watch. I watch a lot of cabinetry YouTube channels with the sound off. Because I just like watching the blade go through the wood. I don't know.
Buttery.
Gonna push back. What's up with river tables? You know about
I
these?
don't know about this.
You hear about this?
Nope. Can't formulate a
This
reaction.
is where you take a piece of fucked up wood and you put a bunch of epoxy on it so that
to
it
fill
fills
the
in
gaps.
all the gaps.
Ah.
But they use epoxy that makes everything look like a fucking bowling ball. Like it's got like swirly
Yep.
glitter. It looks awful. But I guess this is like what's popular. I think what's happening is really like this kind of furniture is now sort of downstream of like content creation, so that what makes a good YouTube video, because you get to see the guy putting the drill with the like half a coat hanger on it into the bucket of epoxy.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
And it goes
is unrelated to
that
the
then
use
informs
quality.
What rich people want in their
Yep.
Anyway, enough about this. Seems like sometimes I think maybe I'm actually a little bit I have a little bit more of a valid reason to bring up neurodivergence than I think.
Yeah, but hey, remember how we were saying a bunch of those guys are nice and good? That could be.
Oh yeah, a lot of them. Not me. So then we do we get to Tolson at this point?
I think Tolson, predates, because the next big event is the Lindbergh part of it. But I think Tolson comes in first, and it's I think a highlight of the film for me.
I think so as well. I think Clint has always been good at capturing male bodies, often his own.
Yep. I think he's also good at authentic meet cutes, like kind of the discomfort and the suspense and the tension.
Yeah. I'm very impressed that Leonardo DiCaprio is able to play somebody who can't flirt. It reminds me of the story of Mike Nichols being forced by the studio to meet with Robert Redford for The Graduate. Do you know the story? Have I told this on the podcast 3 times already?
Nope. This is the first time.
So Nichols I think he already knew he wanted Dustin Hoffman, but the studio was like, Robert Redford can sell a film.
Okay.
Go meet with Redford. He's like, it's totally wrong for the character. Like, just meet with him. And so he meets with Robert Redford for the character of Benjamin Bratton.
Of course.
That's his name? Something like that. Benjamin.
Yeah.
Certainly
not
Benjamin.
Okay.
Benjamin Button? Not Button, right? Okay.
Uh-huh.
So he meets with Robert Redford and he says, have you ever had sort of trouble like getting with a girl?
Mm-hmm.
And Robert Redford says, what do you mean? So he didn't get in the part. But anyway,
Yeah.
I think it's been so long since DiCaprio couldn't bed basically anyone he wanted to. And, supposedly, according to the gossip magazines, keep his headphones in the whole time that they're having sex.
Yep. That's what I've heard as well.
Look at his phone or whatever.
To have the women sign an NDA first. Yeah. Pretty normal stuff to do.
Yeah, he likes tall ladies, so he has them sign with the NDA first.
But yeah, this moment, Leo is, or I guess J. Edgar.
Sorry, I had a.
I could tell you were working on something over there. I wasn't quite sure what it was. He's sweating. He takes this approach of being kind of mad at Tolson at first, he's in trouble, which I think
kind of
ineffective,
kind of big
in a good
dogs,
way.
but also I think it immediately compliments his suit. His suit, which is a custom suit from Garfinkel's, which is a real department store in DC, Julius Garfinkel.
Wow.
And I presume enemy of the pod, if you ever heard it, Jay Hoberman, at the time of The Village Voice, in his review of this film, which, by the way, he says is maybe Clint's best since Unforgiven.
I saw that.
Take.
Pretty wild.
He points out that Julius Garfinkel, which he read as an intentional reference, I think maybe because he wasn't like me and didn't bother to look up if Garfinkel's was a real department store. He points out that Julius Garfinkel is the birth name of John Garfield, who was blacklisted.
Okay. Maybe.
Which is interesting.
It's possible.
And also, I'm going to put this out there. DiCaprio in young Hoover get up before the makeup kind of looks like John Garfield.
That's true. A little bit.
Of the film.
You're right.
Thank you so much. You know John Garfield's first stage name? John Odie Garfield Lermal.
Okay.
Okay. There you go.
Trying to get to something Garfield related.
Trying to get to something.
So they meet each other. He tries to big dog him. Well, first they meet at a bar and there's immediate sexual tension, but then they meet at the interview.
Yeah.
And he tries to big dog him and Tolson just sees right through it and just kind of
takes he's doing push-ups in Hot Rod. He's doing push-ups already and saying 996, 997.
Great things. We get that, and then at the end, it's revealed that he was doing it because he was just sweating out of nerves. I think it's rare that.
Yeah,
it's rare that you get the memento reveal doesn't take away from the both are wonderful just independently.
Yes.
And he sort of just demands that he give him a job, and there's just this immediate understanding that there's a special relationship because previously J. Edgar has been truly does not allow a single bit of resistance of subversion of disagreement from any other person that he's working with, but for some reason he lets it happen with Tolson. Because
Tolson is, in the film's eyes, Hoover's ideal in a lot of ways. There is sort of an element of both sexual attraction and also kind of he is Hoover's
platonic vision of
he's his Tyler Durden almost. He's the hot version of himself, what he wishes he looked like. A man who doesn't need
a booster table under his whole desk.
Which is interesting. The film does kind of one of those biopic things where Hoover and Gandy are talking and they come up with the riser behind the desk in the same conversation where they come up with the confidential file. Yeah.
Sometimes the efficiency,
which I guess could be possible. I mean, Dolly Parton did write Jolene and I Will Always Love You on the same night or whatever, but at least underline this, that it was the same conversation, So he and Tolson, they go to get suits picked out. Ian's name on the video call here today is Fash Ian Forward, which did you mean for it to have Fash?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were thinking about all this stuff
I'm a layered
going on?
Man. That's right.
You've had all the thoughts I've had and more?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. My nightmare. They go to Garfinkel's. They have it's very gay coded in the script.
One of many scenes like this.
And this is also where J. Edgar, I wonder what you made of this. he sort of solidifies, because he's been going by John,
His mom calls
Johnny,
him Edgar.
John Edgar, like, yeah. He sort of solidifies the name and signs it in the I believe the same image that is used like on the poster and stuff. Specifically when applying for credit, a line of credit at
I
a
like this
department store. I don't know. Is there anything to that?
I think it could be, sure. The place where you most confirm your identity is through capitalist consumption. I like that. And
it's also specifically capitalist consumption of like a specific kind of masculine
it's true.
image.
Yeah. And
the suit.
And it's not even the initial version. He's like remade it many times, so there's no authenticity to it that's left. Great.
Exactly. Yeah. Wear the blue tie. We haven't shouted out Philomena herself.
We haven't. It's true. Big JD.
Dame Judi Dench. Dame Judy back at it again with the white shoes.
Don't think I have a single.
I never saw that video.
Daniel. Don't think I have a single complaint about her. She's great in the film for me.
Yeah, she shows up. She does the work. I do want to find something out here really quick. Hold on, Judy.
While Jake is looking that up, what I appreciated.
She is younger than Clint.
Yeah, of course. To him,
she's 4 years younger than Clint
She's
Eastwood.
like a waifish young figure.
Yeah.
So she is
a whippersnapper.
Kind of domineering, but I appreciated, I've talked about MacArthur and these other famous historical figures who had these moms, but it didn't play as
history's great moms.
Didn't play as cartoonish to me. She is like just has a very strong influence in a way that for J. Edgar is like the biggest force in his life, but it doesn't, to another person's eyes, it wouldn't come off as like, oh, she's controlling, she's puppeteering him or something. Yeah,
it is very. And I think Dustin Lance Black is the kind of screenwriter for whom story still trumps, like, Robert McKee style story.
Yes, I agree.
With a capital S still trumps like any kind of political message you're trying to make. And it does read like the setup of Hoover's mom and Hoover's dad is very screenwriting shorthand, like psychologizing, because he's got this incapacitated father who seems to have dementia.
Yes.
So he's got no father figure, and he's got a mother who is controlling of him in a way that he finds
and homophobic
comfort in.
And
Yes. She'd rather have a dead son than a daffodil.
But she also
son.
confirms his achievements. It's not like she's a total, again, cartoonish shrew or something about his failures. She affirms his inflated sense of himself.
That she does. And she also is old Deuteronomy in the film Cats.
That's true. That is true as well, we must say.
I got to see the version before they patched out her wedding ring. I'm pretty proud of myself.
Cool.
Do you know about this?
I don't know about this.
They shipped the DCP of Cats so barely finished that someone forgot to CGI out Dame Judi Dench's wedding ring.
One of the main complaints about the film was that how is one of these cats married?
Well, it was one of the most like egregious things, and it's in certain scenes and not in others. Then they literally like patched the movie like it's a Cyberpunk 2077 or whatever, and
they hit us with
sent out
a
fixed 1.0.0.12.
Cool.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, I want to talk about the film's depiction of this relationship more broadly. Okay. We'll span sort of the gamut of the
Let's span
film.
The gamut. This is time for this week's
span the gamut
segment. Span the gamut.
Yeah, spanning the gamut.
Sorry, having fun.
I mean, I think having Dustin Lance Black write the film, and this is another Imagine co-production with Brian Grazer. I don't think Ron Howard is involved at all. I wasn't able to find a ton of information about like how the project originated. If Clint seems to have been brought in because Grazer wanted it done cheaply.
Interesting. Okay.
Which like is not quite enough of that's not a believable reason to me that someone would go to get Clint Eastwood to direct.
No, you would get
there's more
a
involved in that.
Director or something, right? Somebody who you just force to do whatever you want. That seems like a single dimension of a multi-dimensional decision. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just kind of contemplating what you just described, and it's really opening things up for me.
Great.
I feel like it's It's like when I found out Marconi didn't make the Haymarket.
It's a
bomb.
lot like about an hour and 20 minutes.
I guess bomb making and early radio making are not that far apart.
I don't know if there's that many. Like,
isn't it crazy that there's a crystal?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's a real crystal. There's a real part of it.
Did you ever get one of those kits?
I only have seen them on television. Like a transistor
radio maker
I've seen these. I'm aware of what you're talking about. Okay.
We should get one of those kits.
Yeah, that could be nice
Christmas
for us to do together.
Maybe an idea for
what
you.
What if people... there's a Patreon tier for where we stop the rest of the podcast and we'll just start making kits. Little kits.
The kit Pod Casty For Me. Yep. It's the new version of the show. So, I mean, having Dustin Lance Black involved, obviously he won an Oscar for writing a movie about one of the most famous gay politicians of all time.
Yeah, right now we're getting a Bayard Rustin film in this very year of our Lord.
Yeah, and so he's going to write a movie about a gay Hoover, you know, but it's so fascinating to see Clint, and this sort of speaks to our ongoing conversation about how much Clint is covering up what he really thinks in interviews and stuff, or how much of this stuff is unconscious to him. Right. But in all of the interviews I saw, Clint Eastwood speaks almost of the movie almost as if he hasn't made it.
Interesting. Okay.
And let me.
What do you mean?
So he says, for example, quote, "People kind of assumed that they were a couple. They might have been. They might not have. That'll be up for the audience to kind of have to decipher through all that." Like, they are holding hands in the film.
I appreciate
kiss, the
openness.
He leaves
the question maybe becomes what makes a couple, right? They're not allowed to actualize their love. Is that preventative? Yeah. You know what? I don't know. Is there?
I suppose. He also says, I'm so excited to read this to you. They were inseparable pals. They just kind of hung out. Some people were insinuating that there might have been more to the relationship than just buddies. Nobody really knows for sure. But that's part of the mystery of the Mystery Man. And he does a big smile.
Really good. He is talking about it. You're right. Now I'm more on board with your reading.
He is talking about it like he is.
This might be really important, man.
Maybe
because
like
this is
a gaffer.
This
on
is
the
related
film
to like the way he talks about the death penalty, where he's saying like, "Look, I don't know how I feel about it. There's sometimes," and then he's making a film that seems so definitive in one direction. So I don't know. Something's going on here. Is this part of his impish character, or he just like the artistic decisions he makes don't relate to what he feels definitively about the world? I don't know.
I mean, it could also speak to the fact that he takes a script that he likes and he adapts it, and he doesn't make changes to it. And I wonder how much of what is in the story he feels is not his decision. It is the creation of one of his collaborators.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing to be uncertain about, because in the film we get a little parallelism. I'm going to be honest, this was total news to me. I was unaware of this Eleanor Roosevelt like early romance with a news reporter, where they have these letters that I went and looked them up.
Lorena
Hickok. And the letters, I mean, they're not James Joyce letters, but they talk about kissing, laying together. They talk about embracing each other. They talk about missing their warmth. And you have these biographers who say, there's just no way of knowing whether there was a romantic aspect to this relationship. And you just,
Yeah. My girlfriend loves to point out the press has this, she's not the only person to point this out, I think, but my girlfriend is the only person to point this out. I'm going to go back on that. She, as far as I know, she's the only person to come up with it. But like tabloids and stuff love to call famous women who are clearly dating gal pals. They'll say like Kristen Stewart is inseparable from whoever she was, or like, Lindsay Lohan and Samantha Ronson are best pals. They're always doing things together, like having meals and kissing and becoming engaged,
getting in fights about like what they should be doing at home every night.
But what's heartbreaking about I think the film's strongest moment for me is when at the end Tolson is reading the letter. I guess he's reading the letter from Roosevelt to
Correct.
Hickok
as
if it's from Hoover. And are we to believe that Hoover has rewritten it to Tolson? Or I guess it's sort of ambiguous.
That wasn't my answer. The first part, I think, is exactly the way that I read it. He is reading this in his heart, hearing J. Edgar say this to him. I think J. Edgar just had a copy of it, and maybe we're meant to understand that the fact that he held on to it indicates that he had an appreciation of it beyond how it helped him blackmail FDR, right? So the fact that he held on to it, Tolson can read it and say, like, these are words that he might have felt for me.
Specifically, we're talking about the where he mentions the
soft place to the northeast of her mouth that she misses kissing. You talking about this?
Yeah, misses kissing. Is she coming on the show?
You wish, pal.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's tender. I agree with you. I liked this moment. Yes.
Yeah. I want to read something to you that you may have forgotten about that immediately occurred to me when I remembered the name of the guy who Hoover spent his life with. The orang is gentle, cuddly, somewhat mysterious, occasionally mischievous, completely faithful, and above all, a good listener whose needs are uncomplicated and easily satisfied. Putting sex aside, he offered everything guys dream of finding in gals and rarely do. Everything guys hope to find in other guys and sometimes do.
Oh my God, this is Big Clyde.
A Clint Eastwood movie about your friend
Holy
Clyde.
Holy shit, dude. I did not think about this. Incredible.
More to you than any woman ever could be.
Much more important than any observation about the FBI and their Gestapo level overreach. This is amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. The Gestapo wish they were the FBI, first of all.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. They don't have the staying power.
I just feel like those kind of comparisons are only in the FBI's favor.
Sure. I mean, there's a reason that we don't hear secret police about, although there's a famous Truman quote about him saying that the FBI is basically becoming a secret police, a Gestapo. Great. They were and did become this.
That's why they called him President True Man.
That's right.
Everything he said. I want to talk about something that happens, another very strong part of the film, because I think we're got to kind of jump around and hit our big points. First of all, I got to say this. In the American Cinematographer article, they quote Clint's longtime assistant camera one guy, Bill Coe, as saying, when he is operating the Steadicam, which can be difficult because, especially on a Clint set, the actors are often sort of improvising, blocking, and focus pulling is difficult. Clint apparently tells Bill Coe to use the Force. Incredible to think about. Clint is quoting a movie that came out when he was 47 years old.
It's true. It's true, yeah. He was like in the last part of his life, presumably.
But there's a shot of old Hoover and old Tolson walking down a hallway, and they get into an elevator. And when they come out of the elevator, they are young versions of themselves. And it is such a... I mean, to me, it like sort of knocked me over figuratively in how directly and simply it was able to convey Washington gerontocracy. Thinking about how these men spend their entire lives in the same building, riding the same elevator for 48 years.
One extremely fetid perspective on the world that's just been reinforced by their tiny, tiny atmosphere. Yeah.
Exactly. And you get, I mean, you know, this is, I think, the argument for the film's prosthetics, which also, according to the American Cinematographer article, the schedule only allowed one day for makeup tests, and that was more than enough for Clint. He saw the first makeup test by DiCaprio's go-to makeup person, Sean Gregg, who has been doing his makeup, Sean Grigg, who's been doing his makeup since time in memoriam, and, you know, did it for Killers of the Flower Moon, like still at it. She designed the prosthetics. Clint took one look and said, sounds good. But this is, I think, an argument for the prosthetics, which is we need to see the same like literal man across this whole period in order to see how, you know, when Jeffrey Donovan comes back as Mayor Quimby and his RFK is, it's okay.
I agree. I think it's just okay. He's doing another big accent. He seems to have gotten too excited because he knows Clint's going to let him do it.
Which is fun. Imagine if he played RFK and didn't do anything, though. That would be kind of cool. Yeah. You'd keep having to remind yourself who this guy was supposed to be. But when he says it's not the 1920s anymore, and they have this discussion about like Hoover's sort of dinosaur ideas that communism is still a domestic issue and not a foreign one, just shows how like totally out of step he is with
I was
with everything.
Setting this up a little bit earlier, but he addresses and worries about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in exactly the same way that he worried about Emma Goldman, right? I think we're meant to, if we don't get the exact same language, it's, near paraphrasing of the same language, where he says, this is the most dangerous man in America. You, Jake, sent me a wonderful documentary that I was unaware of, MLK FBI. And in that documentary, really great. They quote,
it's on Hulu.
William Sullivan, Bill Sullivan, who was second in command, and a guy who's
not in the film at all.
Yeah, it's strange because he later turned against J. Edgar, and if you can believe it, died in a hunting accident where somebody shot him in the neck through a scope. So that's just a weird thing. Can't figure out why that might be the case, but
one of those freak things.
Anyway, he was kind of the architect of COINTELPRO. Well, we could say that J. Edgar was, but he was like the guy who made it happen, the actualizer.
Denzel Washington.
And he also, right after the March on Washington, I'm going to quote something that uses archaic racist language, but he says of MLK, this is the most dangerous Negro in America. We need to use every resource at our disposal to destroy him. So this to me was like straight out of the film we had just watched. This is his view of these people, is that a single individual represents an existential threat, and that means you're entitled to act as you please to take them down.
I watched this documentary. It's wonderful. It's also, uncontroversial, but Martin Luther King, just one of the most compelling people to like watch and listen to who's ever lived.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It is so crazy.
Even if I also value, my perspectives evolved a little bit to appreciate the MLK, Malcolm X, sort of, whatever duology, this importance of both sides. But when he speaks, it's like, it makes
the
your
musicality
body vibrate.
of it. I mean, it's the influence of the church and all that is like, it's so powerful. Like
I think of this as well. Such a good training ground.
To take Black Baptist church cadence and that particular way of speaking and apply it to a broader national civil rights dialogue is just like a masterstroke. And there's also that bit of archival footage in there where King is on some kind of panel show and he's joking about how his father won't let him forget that he is the senior pastor at Ebenezer Baptist, and Martin Luther King, who was, I don't know if he had already won the Nobel Prize or if he was going to or whatever, but like, don't forget you are the co-pastor. Just seeing Dr. King joking around is very nice. And
I had the same feeling. There's another little piece. It's like a 3-second clip where he's talking to a reporter who's going to interview him, and he said, like, this is just practice, right? We're just like, rehearsing here. And the guy says, like, yeah, we're just rehearsing. It's
seeing the like setting up the lavalier mic equivalent stuff is so humanizing for these people.
Demonstrating that J. Edgar is, in addition to being a nasty and evil influence on all of history, just a stupid man. Because in fact, I will say, humanizing this guy is extremely winning, to say like, oh yeah, this is not just some media figure. I mean, of course, what he attempted to do in the film and in real life is to out him as kind of a philanderer. Not something we think is cool unless this is polyamory. But yeah, to imagine that what people care about more than anything, maybe it's an accurate description of like waspy worldview, which is that, we care more about respectability and decorum than anything else. But he believes that by outing this man as not like a perfect paragon of virtue, it's just going to undermine everything he's ever said about Black liberation, which is so insane.
Totally unrelated.
Yep.
Yeah. And they are a fascinating comparison. And of course, this is, I think, one of the theses of the film and of most biographies of Hoover, but that he is so violently, so feverishly trying to police the private lives or exploit the private indiscretions of
and like guilt by association,
other people,
yep,
because he is so deeply ashamed or conflicted about his own mostly unacted upon indiscretions, mostly mental indiscretions,
but fear of discovery of these aspects of him.
Yeah, we should say that the cross-dressing stuff has mostly been debunked. It came from one biography published in the 90s that cited exclusively people who claimed to have seen photographs of Hoover cross-dressing, and none of them were ever produced. And it also speaks to a kind of like...
it echoes just classic homophobic fantasy stuff as well, right? To say
it's like
that,
the same... it's the same thing as when, your classic lib guys make jokes about how Trump and Putin are gay for each other because it's bad to be gay, I guess.
Yeah.
Same bullshit. But I think the film sort of hints at that in a way that is certainly very impressively nuanced and humane for what you might expect from a Clint Eastwood type. You said it was absurd.
It did feel
I think
that way.
it is, at the very least, points to the many nuanced reasons that someone might put on clothing that is traditionally associated with
beyond
a different
just
gender
a big box
expression
that says queer people or something. Yes,
or like
I
you're
agree with
a
that
sex
part.
freak.
Although I don't know if I use the word nuance. Part of what I disliked is, one, is the shoehorning in of this famous story that didn't feel entirely necessary, and two, it's just used as an opportunity to make explicit. And I think actually the film is pretty good in general about leaving subtext as subtext, but there's a few times, including this one, where he just says the stuff his mother said to him to make himself feel better, and we're meant to understand.
People pointed to Psycho in a lot of reviews, which is not a great association for this part of Hoover's life. I think the rest of a lot of it, the things he did publicly in his capacity as the director of the FBI, could be considered.
Yes, official role is
like something a mass murderer would do.
Yep. The baby skeleton was really awful. Just a crazy choice. We haven't
really talked about the Lindbergh stuff at all.
Yeah, I don't know if it's kind of included in a lot of the big umbrella stuff we said. It's a fascinating case.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting case because, as far as I could tell, people still haven't totally landed on a certain position.
Yeah, it seems like Hauptmann, including Eleanor Roosevelt, pushed back on Hauptmann's guilt. It seems
he may have been associated with the people who kidnapped. It's unclear.
Yeah, and also, it gets at this anti-immigrant paranoia at the time. It at once, it kind of points to the danger of these big crime of the century, true crime obsession things, because as often happens, as happened in the film, law enforcement and other government agents of violent oppression will seize on these moments to grant themselves more and more power.
Right.
This led to the Little Lindbergh Act, the Federal Kidnapping Act, which made kidnapping a federal crime. The kind of thing that sounds boring and you're like, why wasn't it that before? But when you look at it, it ends up just being another way for more people to be allowed to come into wherever they want with guns and stuff. And
exactly. I think you're absolutely right that it's an unremarked upon part of history. That part of what makes it boring to study is that the surface level stuff doesn't reveal the depths of how it'll be applied, or what the reality of the world is. And I think that's also a failure of people who explain
it's actually
history.
Cool and smart that I find stuff boring and hard to follow.
That's right.
Yeah.
And just as a fun note, of course, first AD on the film is Armin Douglas Hammer. Second AD on the film is Adam Driver. We get a little Adam Driver moment here. He's
I got confused because first AD meaning another thing, and you were making a joke that is funny now, but I wasn't quite smart enough to not get scared when you started doing it and saying stuff I didn't understand.
Real film heads out there who know about this type of stuff.
This was the film debut of Adam Driver.
Yeah, he's making a lot of big choices. It's fine.
Hollywood's big weirdo himself.
Yep.
Yeah.
I couldn't quite tell what his character was or what the deal was, but I like Adam Driver.
Did you know that there's a film where Adam Driver plays Kylo Ren? Did you know that? He played Kylo Ren in the film?
Yep. There's another
New
one where he
joke type I'm
plays
trying out, I guess.
Mr. Patterson. John Patterson.
Yeah. They do mention Patterson in this film. And
It's true.
It's another funny sort of, Miss Gandy comes up and says, should I book our travel to Patterson for Valentine's Day? And he smiles, and it seems like sort of a sweet inter-office romance. And then it turns out he's going there to raid a bunch of radicals.
Correct. Yes.
What did you make of the scene where Hoover sees some of the cops beating the shit out of a guy during that raid and says, stop that?
I don't know if it was the film's intention. Here we can say again, I would probably even wager a guess that Clint probably meant this to show that there's like a human limit to what he was personally willing to do. But you know what? Maybe actually I'm going to retract that. I think Clint's a extremely complex man. So I think to me, this moment was showing that he's a man who doesn't have the courage of his convictions, who doesn't recognize what the things he's asking for look like in the world, right? He is a guy who lives off of fear. We have this, I think it reminded me of Jonathan Demme's adaptation of Manchurian Candidate, where there's these sort of like feverish, like little montages of what has happened, what could be happening, what somebody's afraid is happening towards the end. And I thought that was wonderful. I think this underpins a lot of right-wing thinking, right? Is this sort of like hodgepodge of your fantasy versus some things that you've blown out of proportion.
What is happening and what you're afraid of is happening.
Exactly. And to me, this is the opposite in the scene where he actually sees his men beating somebody, because he doesn't recognize that this is what he's always been ordering, right? It happens pretty early on in the film, so I don't know if it gets full impact, but this is what he's telling people to go do all over the place.
That's what he's sending people to do.
Yeah, famously, I forget the man's name, but look up, listeners, the member of the FBI who was embedded with the KKK and basically just did some of the worst stuff the KKK ever did. So the church bombing that killed the 4 girls in the South was a huge inciting incident for the civil rights movement. He was involved with that. A bunch of other awful shit. Hard to decide whether he was doing this with the permission of the FBI or was just, like undercover and, felt like he had to do it, whatever.
Yeah.
But this is what they're asking for, right? I have to admit that the FBI MLK letter, which is portrayed nicely and disgustingly in the film, was kind of a big discovery for me in real life when I was 19. In real life,
I think Sullivan wrote it.
Correct.
Is what Gage says, at least.
The guess, yeah. But regardless, this helped topple my totally fantastic view of the United States to find out that the guy that you're taught in, I think basically as early as elementary school, like everybody loves MLK and the government appreciates what he did, was in fact, attempted to be pressured into killing himself, was blackmailed by some of the highest members of this massive state organization. And that just represents a fraction of Fred Hampton killings, all the COINTELPRO nasty shit. This is just totally, this is not an outlier. This is, this is a feature, not a bug. This is fundamental to the way the United States operates.
I got a shout out, and also it's sort of a shout out and a tisk at the same time to my friends over there at soundbible.com, which is where I get a lot of some of this podcast's favorite noises, and
little boing
and
no.
Yep.
So when you search police on soundbible.com, it also brings up all of the recorded noises of pigs oinking and snorting and things like that, which is very funny. However, this is offensive to pigs because I think pigs are noble and beautiful creatures.
Yes,
they're very loving.
Pig protector myself.
They're very thoughtful.
Yep.
And so I think we got to start
animals.
Eating them is, of course, haram.
It is. Yep.
And that's an official Pod Casty For Me position. Yep. But I don't think it should be because they are unclean, but because they are beings who deserve to be respected and protected.
No, in fact, you want a farm fact to support your beautiful position.
Farm fact.
Pigs, an animal that famously will only defecate in one area of their pen. So if they have a humane enclosure, they will pick a corner and only use that corner as what we might call the restroom.
Mm-hmm.
And they do not do anything else in the restroom, the bad area. So the only reason that they are often covered in their own filth is because they are put in 5x5 squares with 4 other pigs. So guess what? Yeah. Good luck not being covered in your own shit in a situation like that.
The reason they wallow in mud is because their skin, much like that of human beings, is susceptible to sunburn. And so they have invented their own sunscreen by rolling themselves in mud.
Smarter than almost everyone listened to this podcast, never invented their own sunscreen.
You know who else did that? Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Marconi. Okay.
One-time governor of California. So you wouldn't eat him, would you? Remember in Predator?
Yep. I do remember that. Yeah.
Probably tastes bad. I want to... Do we have any sort of final thoughts as we wind down here?
We got 2 last things I want to talk about. One, talk a lot about loyalty in this film. Can we stake a podcasting position? Loyalty is a fake virtue. There's not anything special about sticking with people who are bad. In fact, you shouldn't do that.
Loyalty is so nasty.
Yep. If you want to call somebody in, as they say, if you want to critique but forgive, that's great. Or if you want to abandon people because they're bad, that's also a legitimate option.
I think that the people who talk about loyalty a lot are also, they, in my experience, tend to be the type of men who call women females.
Sure. Yeah.
Loyalty, I think, means essentially reacting negatively to the cruel or bad things that I do.
Don't
and
make me feel
disloyal
bad.
To me.
Yes. Do not ever disagree with me or say that something I did is not good.
Why are you spending time with people who aren't me just because they treat you better than me? You're being disloyal.
Yeah. Why do you have your own desires or a range of interests in the world? Yeah. It's bad.
Yeah. Loyalty sucks. Yeah. And also, let's just say this, being tall, Pod Casty For Me position, being tall, neither an accomplishment nor a virtue.
That's true. Yep.
You shouldn't get any extra points. And people who privilege the tall are being exactly like J. Edgar Hoover.
In every way. Villains. It's true. Yeah. I mean, you are a projecting fool.
Projecting fool? What am I? Fuck. I don't know. I don't know where to go with this. I'm upset. A couple of things to round off. I want to talk about the little montage.
Which one?
The one during which Hoover says, well, it's when Nixon is elected and Hoover steps out to watch one of the more poorly composited sort of sky captain ass looking
out
parades.
The window. Yeah, they're pretty rough.
And he says, when morals decline and good men do nothing, evil flourishes. I'm doing it as Edgar from Men in Black. Yeah. Every citizen has a duty to learn of this that threatens his home, his children. A society uninterested and unwilling to learn from the past is doomed. We must never forget our history. We must never lower our guard. Even today, there are organizations that have America as their prime target. They would destroy the safety and the happiness of every individual and thrust us into a condition of lawlessness, immorality that passes the imagination. And this is set to a kind of, honestly, Spike Lee reminiscent montage of violence against civil rights demonstrators.
Yeah, this is the Demi montage that I was talking about as well.
Right. And thinking of this as a 2011 film, obviously what Hoover's doing is prologue to the Patriot Act. But also, in the Obama period, there is a sense that all of the evils of the Bush administration are over.
And all the evils kind of the 20th century United States are behind us. I mean, I love that you're pointing this out. This is the same fantasy that had us believing that Roe v. Wade was not just set in stone, but something of like a previous era, a previous age in human history.
Right. I mean, it is particularly meaningful to me that he's literally saying Hoover and Black and Clint all together are sort of saying there are organizations that have America as their prime target. And so essentially Clint is saying the FBI is a terrorist organization.
Yep. I like to believe so. Yeah.
And I once attended a this was an important early moment in my radicalization. I was attending an academic conference it was a musicology conference, and a guy was presenting a paper on specifically LA gangster rap from the era of the Rampart scandal.
Huh?
And he said, it was just common knowledge that the LAPD was the biggest, most successful gang in the city.
Yeah.
And I remember being like 19 and being like, holy shit. Because first of all, that sounds like a really cool thing to say. That's like a very sort of badass thing to say. And then you start thinking about it and you're like, oh yeah, that actually sort of fits with a bunch of other stuff that I know about the LAPD.
Well, and then I think also what you're saying is the big next step is realizing, do we really believe that 20 years have changed the police that much, the LAPD that much? I mean, to say that the FBI, just go look up what they were doing to anti-fascist activists, or what they were doing to, like planting people in Occupy Wall Street or whatever, right? The distance is so small.
As much as, I lived in Northern Virginia, I know plenty of people who would, strike me if I were to suggest that the Army and the Navy are the same thing, because obviously they're very different, and one of them is definitely better at football.
Right.
Or whatever. And also, if we just took any random collection of 15 guys from the Army, they could beat any football team in the league. We all know this.
We all know this, yeah.
But, as much as there's infighting between intelligence organizations and these things may have allowed 9/11 to happen or whatever, the FBI and the NSA and the CIA are the same fucking guys. They're the same. It's the same shit.
Desires.
And so we're 2 years prior to the Snowden revelations.
Yep.
So that shit is happening at this very moment that the film comes out.
Yeah. With
the approval of Obama and Obama appointed figures. James Comey is in the MLK FBI documentary saying that reading the letter urging King to kill himself turned his stomach or something, which shut the fuck up, James Comey.
I hate, because that is doing the opposite of what you're describing. That is drawing a big line and saying well, what a big difference between either this time and now, or those guys and our guys. I want to create an elaborate Truman Show sort of simulacrum just for James Comey to convince him that every other celebrity is participating in an online sort of charity video call out thing called the Morning Piss Challenge, where you drink as much as you can before bed, and you wake up and you have to chug all of your morning piss, and it's for spina bifida or something. Yeah. That's what I want for James Comey, and I hope this doesn't constitute a threat because it's his own piss, so theoretically he would be okay. Some of the safest, most powerful stuff you can drink. Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I agree, and I support this.
Thanks.
One is to say that I think you have already highlighted this beautifully, but I don't know if it's on Clint's mind. I think it is. I don't know if it's on DLB's mind. I think it is. But what makes a film like this potent is to do what this podcast claims is going to do. Talk about how the film speaks to that moment and this one. And it just turns out that it's one moment. Right, that's the big reveal, is that there is no distinction between now and then, and this is not. I hope this doesn't come off as like a Dems and Republicans. What's the difference? What you should really be doing is building your freaky little bunker. Right? No, what I'm saying is,
as a bumper sticker I once saw says, same shit, different pile.
Yeah, what I would say is same shit, different pile, which is why it's the same state organization. But maybe think about a political option for yourself that is one of these ones that J. Edgar was so afraid of. One of these ones that maybe represents actual divergence from the narrative that allowed him to be comfortable under 8 presidents. Different.
And you know what happens after divergence?
Is it
insurgent?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sorry to be glib. I want to sort of end on something for my contribution to the podcast. Okay. Such as it is. I'd like to end on something that Martin Luther King starts talking about toward the end of the MLK FBI documentary, and indeed toward the end of his life, which is he's talking about how the United States government is spending a lot of money on the war in Vietnam and ignoring the needs of poor people at home, having their priorities all mixed up. It also shows photographs of a photo spread that King saw in Ramparts magazine that encouraged his turn against, or his focus on fighting the Vietnam War, which showed a bunch of children who had been burned with napalm. They showed these in the documentary. And these are very familiar photos to anyone who has seen pictures of the children who've been burned by white phosphorus, which is a illegal weapon that's being used by the Israeli Offense Force on the children of Palestine and the adults of Palestine, who are equally undeserving of being bombed to the children.
Yes.
Obviously, the children, it's an easier sell for some people, but for the good listeners of this show,
they know that the adults are equally suffering beyond their control.
In fact, I would say you also shouldn't burn a terrorist with a white phosphorus.
Something to go.
And this is a question for another podcast, but like I keep seeing that the white phosphorus is manufactured in the United States. Why can you manufacture that if you can't drop it on someone under the Geneva Convention?
You know what? I am not a chemist by any measure of the imagination. I think white phosphorus
useful for like fertilizer or something?
I think white phosphorus has other uses, but I think we all know what's up.
So things are looking very similar to this moment in 1967, 1968. Things have not fundamentally changed. People are being railroaded, as to use the term that's familiar to Clint Eastwood fans. And as Hoover, the villain of this film, suggests he's going to do to a doctor who undermines him in front of his staff. Folks are being railroaded for supporting efforts to stop Cop City peaceably. Folks are being railroaded for wearing a keffiyeh. Folks are being railroaded for like handing out pamphlets with information on them.
They are character assassinated in the exact same way, right? They find a doctor and tell us about why something they did in the past means that they're actually a legitimate target, and it's fine that 70, 200, I forget how many medical professionals have been killed. Yeah.
Like literal Israeli citizens who are genocide experts saying this is a genocide are saying this. And then if you say genocide, you're not allowed to have a job anymore. I gotta say also, we forgot to talk about Leah Thompson. Leah Thompson plays Leela Rogers in this, who was the mother of Ginger Rogers, a major force in the House Un-American Activities Committee hearings, finding friendly witnesses. Fuck Leela Rogers. And also Leah Thompson is a Zionist, and it's a bummer, and she should go back to trying to fuck her son in a car from the 50s.
Yeah. I want to just add to what you're saying, that I don't know that this has to be the listener's interpretation of history. This is veering into the personal, but part of how I understand history is that you can't do this counterfactual thing where you say, well, if we had done this thing differently, then the world would be a different place. One, because the thing happened because there was a certain necessity to it based on things that had already happened, right? I think that's a big part of it. And secondarily, because I think that exercise is very dangerous, because it imagines that each of those individual events was not something that grew out of the terrible seeds that exist fundamentally in the American, the Western, whatever capitalist project. And I think when you do stuff like that, when you say, well, what if J. Edgar had been bombed, would the world have been a much better place, right? Or if he had been allowed to love his husband. Yeah. What I think we need to say is what allowed any person to reach that point, and why would it, have been functionally the same? Because it's the same reason that we're having it now, right? It's not productive to say, what if no J. Edgar? Because we have no J. Edgar now, and look at all the stuff that's basically still J. Edgar. So that's telling us that there's something farther upstream that we need to address, that we need to intervene on, and not just do this, to me, a very liberal exercise of saying, like, well, I wish we had just changed this one aspect of United States history and then everything would be fine.
We need the first openly gay FBI director, and that'll solve all the problems.
Yep.
Now, you're better read than me.
I'm an Irish man,
generally.
so yeah, that's correct. Red.
All right.
Complected. Red man.
Yeah, I'm like fully a quarter Irish. I don't want to out Irish anybody.
Sure.
That seems weird to be that proud of.
Yeah.
But we're both
all right.
Shipping up
okay,
to
well,
Boston.
something's going on with me then. Yep.
He had some of the whiskey from RK Maroon's desk.
Yeah.
And he's turning red. All right. The folks who have spent decades thinking and working together to talk and to imagine a world beyond police and incarceration.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the answers that they have come up with for the question of how to address maybe some of the things that the FBI does that are not totally out of the bounds of humane behavior?
Thank you so much, Jake. This is something that we just in this last week talked about wanting to be doing, and then I already forgot that we wanted to do this. But yeah, let's talk about imagine a better world. How have people already done this? I think, look, you know what's fun about imagining a better world? You can have a multiplicity of options. So I think some people argue for centralization of some things because it has certain advantages, right? Maybe it means there's more oversight. Maybe it means there's more consistency in the application of things, which can be good for preventing use of biased, oppressive type selective application. And
right. I mean, we see in the civil rights movement, there is a fair number of instances where federal troops have to be sent into the South to sort of apply the federal law, which is at that point more progressive than like local law.
Although, we could ask about why it was ignored for 20 years. So I think, and look, I am open to that. I think that's an interesting option to say that will allow us to do things like, hey, we can keep track of people in connection with a transformative justice type system that's not about imprisoning people or repressing their voices or limiting freedom of speech, right? And then I think there are other people who make a convincing argument for trying the opposite, which is let's just turn it into a pretty like local control based community version of this, right? Because unfortunately, I think there's legitimate arguments to say as soon as you centralize this, you're making it accessible to bad actors. If anybody ever gets in charge and they're not somebody who supports these ideals of free speech or transformative justice or whatever, then they're going to immediately be able to weaponize it. And you know what? I don't know. I think what's cool about these exercises, I talk a lot about Mariam Kaba on this podcast because I think she's so wonderful. I think she often talks about not loving people who come up with their like Fourier style elaborate vision of the future, right? These like utopian socialists who say like, this is what everything should look like. We should discover this by trying some stuff out. So I guess that's my answer is to say, like, let's just try some of these not
trial and error
FBI things. Yeah. And be open to recognizing that if one of them fails, then it doesn't mean we have to go back to the FBI. It means we should try something else as well. Let's just break down these false binaries of saying it has to be the FBI or it needs to be a resounding success the first time.
FBI false binary investigation. Is that anything?
That might be something big. Yeah.
I was paying attention. I promise I was paying attention. Thank you. That is helpful. And I think on the big board, we are going to try some other stuff and see if any of it works better than the current thing, which is not working.
Get brave.
Get all.
Creative.
Yes, exactly. And I have just one question to ask to sort of conclude here. Do I kill everything that I love?
That's a good question. Yeah. What I wish I could be your Miss Grandy. I wish I could help you out in this moment.
No, I know the answer is no because I have some cats that are still alive.
Okay.
And stuff.
Great.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts before we
I think that
close things up?
is basically it.
Well, that is our episode on J. Edgar, the film by Clint Eastwood. We don't do the Apple TV thing anymore, and I feel like there's a whole as the actress in the film says, that doesn't fill the place where love goes. We need something for
Now you say that reminds me that earlier
whatever.
You said something about a gay Hoover, and I was imagining what a British person would make of that. You know, just imagine just this sort of
I mean, Gay Hoover was probably like the president of Her Majesty's Gardening Association for 30 years
you're
during the interregnum.
So that's what they would make of it. All right, let's fill the hole. What do you want to do? Do you have an idea?
No, I don't. I just, well, as Miriam Kaba might advise us, let's try some things out and see.
Yeah.
See what sticks. Let's work toward a better world slowly and carefully. So next week, well, let's close up the show. Thanks again to our guests for joining us today. Who was our guest today? Miss Kissing? Is that what we said?
Yeah.
Miss Kissing was the guest. That'll do it for today. Remember to subscribe, rate us, write a review. It helps us on the algorithm. If you like the show, tell a friend, tell your dad, record it through the underside of one of those weird benches that goes at the foot of a bed in a hotel. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pod Casty For Me. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or you're interested in co-hosting a 2-person Clint Eastwood podcast, you can email us at podcasterforme@gmail.com. All of this is at podcasterforme.com and at shootingyourselfinthehead.com. Thank you to Jeremy Allison for our artwork. Next week, we're talking Trouble with the Curve.
Yeah, man.
You guys have been begging us. If I printed out all the emails that you guys have sent asking if we're going to do Trouble with the Curve, Greta Thunberg would have my fucking head.
Yep, not a tree left on the face of this sweet earth.
She's going to be joining us to talk about it.
She loves... Is it about sabermetrics? I don't know what this film is about.
If you want to watch Trouble with the Curve, which is directed by Robert Lorenz, who is Clint's longtime producer, who's in all these behind-the-scenes things, and is, boy, is he a less compelling figure than Clinton Eastwood Jr.
Huh.
You can watch that all the usual places, including DirecTV. Ask your uncle if he has that. Ian, what about down there in Mexico? Where can people watch Trouble with the Curve, and what is it called there?
You know what? I'm consider myself almost 5 years on to Mexico to be a pretty capable Spanish speaker. I don't know what this means. It's called golpe de efecto, which means something like hit effect, strike effect. I don't know what that means. Something to do with strikes. Impossible for me to say. And then it has a subtitle about
the Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah, physically, yeah. But anyway, the film is available all over the place. It's on Prime, it's on HBO Max, it's on Amazon, it's on Microsoft, it's on Apple TV as well.
I'm imagining a world where I had something ready.
Okay, great. Beautiful.
Down there in Mexico, they call Apple TV something else. I saw Napoleon yesterday. Ridley Scott's Napoleon also reminded me of this movie. Weird little guy shaping world history in his image because he can't get over his sexual frustration. Yep. That was an Apple original film. So there that's what I'm gonna.
I mean, I think this is an important observation. Look out for these guys. Be on guard.
Thank you. En garde. That's something that Napoleon said a lot of the time. All right, that's our show.
Do we want to plug now at the end of the episode, or do we want to not do this, where we say we now have a Patreon available, or we will be having had a Patreon available, or we'll be having a Patreon available?
Yeah, we got a Patreon coming soon. Look out for our Patreon. We're going to cover the movies Clint made before Play Misty For Me. We're going to cover movies adjacent to Clint Eastwood, like Rango.
Yep.
We're going to cover all sorts of Clint ephemera that we've dug up on archive.org and stuff. So if you like the show, but you hate that it's free, you can find all that at patreon.com/ I haven't set that up yet. So we'll put a link in the description if it's live when this goes out, but it's coming soon. And so are you. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to take that out. All right. So check us out there, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.